Who Brought the Slaves to America by Walter White Jr., 1968, 4-12-8. The story of the slaves in America begins with Christopher Columbus. His voyage to America was not financed by Queen Isabella, but by Louis de Sant'Angelo, who advanced the sum of 17,000 ducats, about 5,000 pounds today, equal to 50,000 pounds, to finance the voyage, which began on August the 3rd, 1492. Columbus was accompanied by 5 marinos, meaning Jews who had forsworn their religion and supposedly become Catholics. Louis de Torre, interpreter; Marco the surgeon; Bemal, physician; Alonso de Lacalle, and Gabriel Sanchez. One is able to assess the Jewish share in the entire dealings of the Newport if one considers the undertaking of a lone Jew, the Portuguese, Aaron Lopez, who plays an important part in the overall story of the Jews and slavery, concerning the entire commerce of the colonies and the later state of Rhode Island, which included Newport. Bills of lading, concessions, receipts, and port clearances carried the signature name of the Jew, Aaron Lopez. This all took place during the years 1726 to 1774. He had, therefore, more than 50% of all dealings under his personal control for almost 50 years. Aside from that, there were other ships which he owned, but sailed under other names. In the year 1749, the first Masonic lodge was established. 90% of the members of this first lodge, 14 all told, were Jews. And one knows that only so-called prominent individuals were accepted. Let us follow the journey of one ship owned by a slave dealer, Aaron Lopez, which has made many trips to the African coast. For instance, in the month of May 1752, the ship Abigail was equipped with around 9,000 gallons of rum, a great supply of iron foot and hand restraints, pistols, powder, sabers, and a lot of worthless tin ornaments, and under the command of the Jewish Captain Friedman, sailed off for Africa. There were but 2 mates and 6 sailors, comprising the crew. 3½ months later, they landed on the African coast. Meantime, there had been constructed an African agency by the Jewish slave dealers, who had corralled them and prepared them for sale. This organization, reaching deep into Africa, had many ramifications, including the heads of groups, villages, etc. This method to win over these leaders for Jewish slave trade was similar to that which the Jews had employed with the Indians. At first, they presented them with rum, and soon found themselves in an alcoholic delirium. When the gold dust and ivory supply was exhausted, they were induced to sell their descendants. Excuse me. But let us turn back to the slave ship Abigail. Its captain, and we are reading from his ship's books, did a profitable business. He sold all of his Negroes in Virginia, invested some of the money in tobacco, rice, sugar, and cotton, and went on to Newport, where he deposited his wares. We learned from Captain Friedman's books that the Abigail was a small ship and could only accommodate 56 people. He managed, however, to clear from one trip $6,621, which he in turn delivered to the owner of the ship, one Aaron Lopez. The staggering amounts of money acquired by the Jew ship owners and slavery dealers is better illustrated when we emphasize the many years in which the sale and purchase of human flesh was practiced. Although we have considered Aaron Lopez several times, the size of this documented treatise limits us, and we cannot describe all of the writers concerned in the slavery dealing correspondence, their names, and the special dates. Rather, we wish to study the documentation of the Carnegie Institute itself, keeping Aaron Lopez in mind. We wish to see what in the main this Jew was pursuing and what his business was. This is due to the fact that Rabbi Morris A. Gutstein presents him as a lofty and fine civilian of Newport who was so generous and even made contributions to welfare. In a great number of published, original, unprejudiced writings in the Carnegie Institute, we find that Aaron Lopez pursued a tremendous commerce in rum with the African coast in exchange for slaves. These irrefutable facts are as follows. June 22nd, 1764, a letter by Captain William Stead to Aaron Lopez. July 22nd, 1765, a letter by Aaron Lopez to Captain Nathaniel Briggs. July 22nd, 1765, a letter to Captain Abraham All. February the 4th, 1766, a letter to Captain William Stead by Aaron Lopez. March the 7th, 1766, a letter by Captain William Stead to Aaron Lopez. February 20th, 1766, a letter by Aaron Lopez to Captain William Stead. October the 8th, 1766, a letter by Captain William Stead to Aaron Lopez. February 9th, 1767, a letter by Captain William Stead to Aaron Lopez. In all of the letters which the Carnegie Institute published, it stresses the lack of human sympathy for the poor Negro slaves. This lack of feeling and compassion for the abused and pitiful blacks at the hands of their Jewish dealers can be read out of the diary of a captain who manned a ship owned by Aaron Lopez. The entries concern a trip from the African coast to Charleston. Moreover, they are authentic documents published by the Carnegie Institute in Washington, D.C., calling attention to an organization which had heretofore known little or nothing about. Neither had they encountered further publicity in books or newspapers. Therefore, it is not to be wondered at that the facts of the leading share of American Jews in the slave trade could be pointed out as a monopoly and unknown to the non-Jewish Americans, including the great masses of people all over the world.